is India-China relationship. Does it need a reset? That's the question we are going to raise. And speakers are very eminent personalities in the field. Gautam Bambawale, who was our foreign ambassador to China and Pakistan. Besides that, he had held many strategic positions in the government of India, and he knows everything what happened in Pakistan and China together on the side, on the public side and inside as well. We also got Lieutenant General Narasimhan, member National Security Advisor Board and Director General Center for Contemporary China Studies. He was also posted in China. And finally, we've got NC Pipendra, a defense analyst and my former colleague. Questions which we are going to raise in this issue is, one of the questions, should China be handled by diplomacy or military? Have there been both diplomatic and intelligence slippages? We have to also discuss, should India boycott Chinese products and technology? Finally, should India raise its defense budget? These are some of the questions which I'm going to raise with all of you. I will ask my colleague Nabindra to raise the first question so that he can set the tone for the further discussion. Nabindra, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chawla, for this opportunity. And I think this is going to be a scintillating debate because of the issues involved. I think China is one of our most troublesome neighbor, if I can describe it that way. So the first question I have for both our panelists is China trustworthy? Is China trustworthy for India? Can we trust China? That is the first question.
You are a diplomat. You should not give a diplomatic answer.
No, I am not going to give a diplomatic answer, but you know, I believe that this is in a relationship between any two countries. There's no question of asking about whether you trust each other. Ronald Reagan once had said, yes, you can trust, but you must verify. And I think that verification is more important than trust. So my answer to that question is, don't expect any trust between any two countries in the world, but you must be able to verify what the other is doing, and especially what the other has promised you to do in terms of an agreement or a MOU or some kind of intergovernmental agreement.
Mr. Narasimhan, what about you?
I'll quote from the Chinese. Chavanlai once said, don't see what we say, don't look at what we say, look at what we do. So that actually supplements what Mr. Gautam Bambawale had said earlier, saying that, you know, even if you trust, you need to verify. That actually goes to say that even if you trust is saying whatever he's saying, you really need to verify and see what he's doing. So I think I go along with Mr. Bambawale when he says that we must verify. I also maintain that same stance. Having said that, without trust, you cannot have a bilateral relationship. So trust may vary with events, etc. Now, the moment this Galwan incident has happened, you will find the trust levels going down. But it is for both the countries to build the trust back again and get on the path of mending the relationship and bring it back on even keel at some point in time.
You see, both of you have made a very important statement. Gautam says, don't trust us, but after verification. You say, look at us, what we do. On both these parameters, do you think China stands any chance? Did you verify what they have been doing for the last 15 days or 20 days or 25 days? And Mr. Narasimhan, don't you know that what they were doing knew about it? Or we ignored it? And you still you want to talk about them? I would like to know the rationale behind what you are saying, because both of you are very expert in this area. So I would ask Gautam, when he says, trust us after
the reason why I
verification,
say that is,
Prime Minister has met the President 18 times according to the newspaper. Was that a verification process or not?
Well, let me first of all say, Prabhuji, that, you know, because we know that there is no agreed boundary or LAC between India and China, it was very important to ensure that peace and tranquility is maintained on the India-China border. And for maintaining peace and tranquility on the India-China border, since 1993, we have signed many agreements, and we have built up a huge architecture in those agreements. It's an architecture of standard operating procedures. It's an architecture of basic principles and tenets, which were aimed at ensuring that peace and tranquility is maintained on the border. Now, right from 1993, when the first agreement was signed, right till 2020, we managed to maintain that peace and tranquility. In 2020, something new has happened. And that something new is that the Chinese army or the Chinese PLA, they tried to change the status quo on the ground. And once again, I go back to the point that I will go not by his claims and not our counter claims, but by what he actually does on the ground. So on the ground, he attempted to change the status quo, which has led to the standoff in the Galwan River Valley and which led to the deaths of scores of soldiers on both sides. Both Indian Army and PLA have lost soldiers that evening. And as a result of it, the entire architecture which was built up from 1993 for ensuring peace and tranquility has now collapsed.
Mr. Narasimha, you wanted to say, because I asked you the same question,
Yeah,
what they do,
the question
that's on the ground. So what Mr. Bambawale has been saying, that on the ground, what they have been doing, violating all the agreements which we have signed during the past 10 years, 20 years, whatever. So how can they be trusted on that ground?
No, the thing that we have to see is actually how things have been panning out on ground. I mean, there have been a lot of questions whether we had the intelligence, we didn't have the intelligence, etc., etc. But my take is that all these things that are happening on ground were being monitored. It is not that nothing was being monitored, and everybody was on ball, even in this recent incident that was taking place. So the issue that comes up is we need to see what they are doing on ground. That is extremely important for us to see. That is why when you have face-offs and that guy is considering a track to a particular point, etc., we need to actually verify it and check whether it is in their area, in our area, etc., etc., and then take a call on where to stop him. That is one such incident that happened in Doklam. Of course, we say it's in Bhutanese territory, and so that is a different ball game. But this time around, when they came to the areas that they came, obviously Nakula is an example. Nakula was not in contention, say 10 years ago. I was a divisional commander in Sikkim. At that time, there was no problem with Nakula. Nakula never figured in any of the discussions. It has come up much later. So what it tells us is, he is trying to shift the goalpost a little bit here and there. That point we need to verify. And that is where I go with Mr. Bambawale, that whatever he may say, we will trust him, but we'll also verify it on ground to say that what he is doing is right or wrong. And if it is anywhere across the LAC, we'll put a stop to it there.
Yeah, you want to ask?
Yes, I just want to understand, over the years, we have seen, at least in the last decade, we have seen the Chinese trying to nibble at India's LAC and trying to, take over land and then realign the LAC. That we have seen both in Ladakh and other places over the years. But are we not sure of their intentions even now? Are we not? Why aren't we taking any action in this regard?
The question is to me or to Mr. Bambawale?
I think it is both of you, since both of you have mentioned about the reasons and how to verify them.
Gautam, would you like to go ahead first?
Yeah.
No, why don't you go ahead first this time?
Okay, fine. I'll do that. I have no issues. You see, when you say they have been trying to nibble, please understand they have not been able to nibble anywhere. That is the point that we must first keep in mind. They may keep trying. What they are trying actually, they have a policy of constructing tracks connecting all the passes along the line of actual control. And that line of actual control is not something which we both agree on. So what happens is in many other places, like for example, when I was a corps commander in the area of Asafila, they tried to construct a track. We came to know of it, we told them, we put a stop to them, they went back. So they'll keep trying to connect the passes with the roads, with the roads. So that is something that is a policy that they adopted. It is not particular to Doklam, it is not particular to Asafila, it is not particular to anything else. That's a policy. On that policy, when he's creating these roads and the infrastructure, it is for us to verify exactly where that LAC is and then tell him, friend, don't come across this. And as long as you are strong on that particular aspect and ensure he doesn't step in, you're fine. So when people are saying, I have lost territory here, there, etc., I would like them to tell me where exactly they have lost this territory in the last decade or so, what they are saying. As far as I see, we have not lost any. In fact, look at Sikkim. Sikkim was almost a settled boundary. When that area of the finger started in the North Sikkim, we didn't budge an inch. So did we not budge an inch in Nakula. I don't think we have given up territory like this to say that he has been salami slicing, he has been coming in, etc. That I don't think is a correct way of interpreting these things. He's got a policy, he's trying to implement it. As long as he does it on his side, we should allow it to do it, because that is his side. He can do whatever he wants. But when he wants to step into your territories, particularly in the disputed areas of the LAC, different perceptions of the LAC, there you put a stop to it and say, sorry, you're not crossing this line. So that is what we need to do. That's what we are doing on ground.
Gautam, you have to react.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to react. I'm only going to say my bit, which is that I agree with what General Narasimhan has been saying, that we have been, the Indian Army has been putting up a good show and has been Indian territory. There's no doubt about that. But this time round, what he tried to do was to try to move his ground positions into alignment with what in his mind is his LAC. And we have told him for many decades that we do not agree with your perception of the LAC, or we do not agree with your idea of the LAC. And therefore, we stopped him where he was and didn't allow him to cross the LAC as we see it. But I think what he was trying to do in a larger framework is to unilaterally define and decide where the LAC is, which is completely unacceptable to India. And I think because of the strong military action which has been taken this time, the message should have gone across to him. But in the process, I am afraid that he has, he has violated all the terms of the agreements that we have signed, which were ensuring that peace and tranquility would be maintained on the India-China border areas. Those have fallen by the wayside, I'm afraid, and new agreements may be required in the future. We'll have to wait and see.
So Gautam, in a way, you're saying whatever agreements have been signed, you were Chinese ambassador also there, and you're on the desk in Joint Secretary here, dealing for 6 years, you're in charge of there. So many agreements you'll be signing one after another. It means there is no defined LAC, as you pointed out. What they see is their LAC, we don't see that is their LAC, and our LAC there. So every agreement has been followed by yet another agreement, and second agreement has been followed by third agreement. At the moment, none of the agreements have led to what you call peace and tranquility. It means the agreements which were signed, they were not kept in mind. They would be even feasible on the ground or not.
Look, in answer to that question, I must point out that from 1993 to 2020, peace has been maintained on the LAC or on the border areas of India and China. So the agreements have worked for almost 20 odd years, 25 years almost.
What about Doklam? Doklam, they tried to disturb something. No,
Doklam is a different issue because that falls in Bhutan. So it's not exactly it's not part of our agreements between India and China. But the agreements held and all the measures for ensuring peace and tranquility held. But this year, they have been violated by the Chinese side.
What is the provocation? If you are an expert here, you know their mind also, you're there, both of you have been there. So I'll ask you, Gautam, first. What could be the provocation for Chinese at this stage, when they are getting all the preferred status from India? Prime Minister met him 18 times, took him to Gujarat, took him to Chennai, showed him everything, whatever you could do, unrolled whatever you can do, जो भारत में करते हैं कि guest का स्वागत करो. उसके बावजूद, what is this provocation on the part of the President of China to provoke India?
Yeah, no, we can only guess at some of the reasons because it is very difficult for us to kind of find out what the Chinese were thinking. I think it is very simple. Lots of people say it is for various reasons, like please don't go close to the Americans, stay far away from them. Some say the road building has concerned him. I think it was much more basic and simple than that. He wanted to be on the ground and control the territory, which in his mind is his. That is the reason.
Suddenly, why it struck him that I want some expansion of my territory
He
and change the job of LS? Why?
That's an excellent question and a very good question. I think he just thought that the time is the correct time when India is focused on protecting itself and preventing the spread of COVID-19. He himself has come through it faster than other countries. So it could just be that. But I must say that this is all speculative. We don't really know what the answer to your excellent question really is. The only way to answer it is to ask Mr. Xi Jinping himself.
What about Mr. Narasimha? General Narasimha, you can tell us what could be the provocation? It is strategic provocation, it is a military or something to do with COVID, because I don't understand the logic behind it. After 20 years, you're violating the agreement. There has to be some very compulsive reason for it.
I don't think it is COVID. COVID has got nothing to do with this. In fact, he has done well in COVID. He doesn't have to prove anything to anybody. And then when when India is going through this COVID pandemic, if he does this, it also shows him as a weak. Because when a country is going through problems, if he is trying to do this kind of thing, obviously it also shows him to be weak. He is being opportunistic about the whole thing.
No,
I go with I'm not finished.
Yeah, please go ahead.
What Mr. Gautam said has a bearing on this, and what he said that he is trying to fix the LAC as per his idea of where that LAC lies. So that seems to be the reason for this. That is one. Second thing, the question will be asked as to why now. That will be the question that you will ask. Why now? And that why now question is actually can be explained in 2-3 ways. One is that this road which we had constructed is not of a objection to him, basically because he knows that is well within our territory. What we were constructing as feeder from this was the one which he was worried about. DSDBO road is very much on the western bank of Shiok River. He doesn't have any problems with that. He knows that road has been constructed for the last about 10-12 years. He is not worried about that. The objection came when we were wanting to do the feeder infrastructure in the form of the bridge plus some other tracks, etc., moving towards the LAC. There he was uncomfortable because he doesn't know where that is going to lead. So that is one reason that we can say. Second reason is
complete, please.
The second reason is this is also the time. Every year during this period, you find his forces coming to that area for exercises. This May to September period is the period in which the troops are already available to him. If at all he wanted to protest what we are doing against, he can easily do that now because his troops are available to him at that point in time. The weather is also slightly better in summer time to do this. So one is this infrastructure business. The second is, I think in his mind, there is some problem regarding the line of actual control. And what that problem is, it could be because we made that a union territory, which is totally an internal issue. And Mr. Jaishankar has gone and explained that to Mr. Wangi immediately after that. There is something which is actually bothering him as far as that line of actual control is concerned. And the reason why I'm saying this is, take your mind back to 2013. The first problem came up in Dipsang Bulge in 2013. In 2014, he came into Chumar. He created a problem in Chumar. He didn't come, but there was a problem there. 2017, of course, was in Sikkim. 2020 is back again to Ladakh. So Ladakh has been somewhere worrying him from about 2013 onwards is what I can really make out. Because before that, there were no major incidents since 1986. Wangdung was the place when we had the major incident. Thereafter, the problem started in 2013 when Xi Jinping had just taken over at that time. So as I see it, I think Ladakh has been worrying him. The LAC in Ladakh has been worrying him. That seems to be the reason why he is trying to set that line as per his requirement.
Mr. General Narasimha, are you saying that after this new creation of union territory, you have made that point that China is more worried? It is trying to play the Pakistan card against us, because Pakistan must be upset because of that also. No? It was basically the article being abolished. You have a union territory where direct intervention is there of the central government. They have more access to information than they thought they would have. So China was worried about that their sources will dry up because it becomes union territory now.
No, it is not because of that. I think to help out Pakistan, he tried to take us to UN Security Council where he failed considerably. He not
So
once.
basically,
He tried twice. He tried twice, thrice, but he didn't succeed there.
so
It
basically,
is
he's
not
a proxy for
Pakistan.
Pakistan. He's working for Pakistan at the moment.
Absolutely. On taking us to UN Security Council, obviously he was doing it at the behest of Pakistan. That is very visible. That was very clear. But the issue
Gautam,
that comes up is when we declared
yeah.
this as a union territory, Aksai Chin was also part of that union territory. That must be worrying him in some form.
So,
The line
Gautam,
of actual control in Ladakh, he has been doing this from 2013, as I explained to you. So, like Mr. Gautam said, these are all guesswork. Nobody actually knows why this thing has happened, but we are all trying to figure out actually as to why this thing has happened.
because so much casualty on our side,
But
40 people
probably
dying. It has not happened. 40 people being killed or martyred in this kind of atmosphere. It never happened for many years. So country is worked up because we are very friendly with China. And suddenly China goes and attacks our people. Where they died, it is a question being debated also. Whether they died in this side of India or that side of China, we really don't know. But what I want to talk to very basic thing. But diplomatically, it is not a bad move on the part of China.
No, in fact, I wanted to come to this question, and I thank you for asking this question. Prabhuji, if what we have just said, that he has done, why has he done this? He's done it for a few kilometers of land and territory in Ladakh. If he has done it for that reason, I would say that that is a minor tactical gain for China, though he has not been able to cross the LAC. So that also he has not been able to achieve. But in the bargain, as you rightly said, because so many people have died on both sides, soldiers have died on both sides, both India and Chinese soldiers have died, I believe and I am arguing that China has strategically lost India. What does that mean? It means that China, by this action this summer in Ladakh, has pushed India into the hands of the US and into the hands of the West. And in the future, we will be much closer. We'll have a much stronger partnership with the democracies of the world, which not only includes US and Western countries, but also countries like Japan, Australia, South Korea, and perhaps even Indonesia. So for some minor tactical gain, he has lost India strategically.
So earlier, because Mr. Modi are trying to balance having a good equation with Trump at the same time having a good equation with Xi also. So that equation has been disturbed by this action at the moment. Is what you're saying?
Absolutely. But I'm not saying that India will break off all kinds of relations with China. No, we will need to resolve our issues through diplomacy, through talking, through negotiation. But I think there is no doubt in anyone's mind in India today that India must strengthen its partnerships with the democracies of the world, which include the United States, which include Japan, which include South Korea, and many other countries.
Gautam, before I go to General Narasimhan, I'll ask you again, don't you think what has happened on the border now? We have been meeting them, we have been discussing them, everything has been happening. A certain section of the media as well as some political section believe it's a major diplomatic failure also. We could not anticipate these moves. Is it correct? That you are a professional as foreign minister.
I believe this is, no, that's an excellent question. But let me say that I don't think this is either any kind of intelligence failure or diplomatic failure or even any kind of other failure. The point is that we always knew that there could be this possibility, but we had not seen it deteriorating so much that soldiers on both sides would die. So you're not wrong that this is a new point, new low point, which we have reached in India-China relations after the conflict of 1962. And I believe that this is an inflection point, and I would strongly recommend to the government that we must make a reassessment of our China policy and then change our China policy or reset our China policy, as you have rightly pointed out. So I totally agree with that India is going to have to reassess and recalibrate its China policy.
General Narasimhan, because he has answered the question, but I will ask you to go question. There is a strong feeling that there's some kind of a military intelligence failure. Also, they are not able to assess what kind of movement is happening on the other side. You got gadgets, you got satellites, you have got everything. There is an impression, which may be right or wrong, I don't know, but I want to know from you, whether our people on the ground were aware of what Chinese were up to. Did they inform the people on this side so that preventive measures could have been taken earlier?
See, it is like this. the PLA troops move in these two areas for the exercises is very well known. As and when they come into these areas, they are constantly looked at. It is not that there was an intelligence failure, but the intention can always be hidden, and the reaction period that you get is something that we need to look at again, in the sense that distances are short, there are infrastructure available to move, those things are being monitored, but yes, the intention was not known, and that is why probably what has happened on ground has happened. But it is not that at any place that the Indian army and the people who are deployed on ground were taken by surprise. And please look at Pankung So, every time a Chinese patrol leaves their post, your patrol actually is on the move to stop them beyond a particular point. So to say that people didn't know what is happening, or intelligence was not available, or satellite pictures were not available, I think that is only people who are saying, who don't know actually how these things function. I have seen these functioning, and I personally feel that there has been no failure of intelligence or preparedness, etc. And also people are saying that, because of COVID, we didn't do the exercise, and so there were less troops in the Northern Command, etc. That again is misplaced kind of a judgment. When this movement took place of the Chinese, and if not more, an equivalent counter build-up took place simultaneously. There were troops which are moved from somewhere else also. They acclimatized and reached the places in time. I don't think anywhere we were found outnumbered or wanting.
Okay.
General Narasimhan and Ambassador Gautam, I am going to ask both of you. Both of you are saying there is no diplomatic failure, but we want to reset our relationship with that. Now, with India becoming the United Nations Security Council member, does it change any situation? Does it give us more elbow room to handle China? Gautam?
No, I think, what we need to do is we also need to factor in that for 2 years, we will be members of the UN Security Council into our reassessment and then recalibration of our policy. But I'll give you one example of what I would recommend and suggest to the government of India, that they must, one of the steps that is available for India is to disallow or ban Chinese firms from participating in our 5G trials and rollouts. And I think that will send a very strong message to China, because it will hurt economically, and therefore it will hurt them in the pocket. So this is an example of one of the steps that we could take. I would strongly recommend it to Government of India.
What about General Narasimhan? Because 5G can be used for every purposes, because China has given to the world COVID, and us they are given something extra to bother about.
5G, I agree with Mr. Gautam Bambawale when he says 5G is something that we need to look at. And we need to look at very closely as far as 5G is concerned, and the security related issues related to 5G is concerned. That process is already on in the government, I'm sure. People are looking at it. Particularly, what is the opposition to Huawei for 5G? It is a security related issue that are actually worrying. Of course, it has got an economic aspect to it, in the sense that it will make Huawei lose a large chunk of project which they could have benefited from. But most likely, even we need to look at the security related issues related to Huawei. That is where most of the countries have gone against Huawei and their 5G rollout. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, and I agree with Mr. Gautam Bambawale when he says that we need to take a considered call on this.
So
what kind of other
if I may ask my question, sir, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Please, we can hear you.
Yes, I think there was some problem with my microphone. So my question is a larger question based on what Ambassador Bambawale and General Narasimhan spoke about. One is on the policy reset that Ambassador Bambawale talked about. I just want to know, we have been giving a lot of concession to China over the years in terms of our policies vis-a-vis China. For example, this one China idea, we have been conceding it on and off. I mean, almost every time we have been conceding it. But is it time for us to reset that and then take a call on whether we need to follow this one China policy? And there are various other concessions that we provide them. So if you can just take us through all that and explain to us what it needs to be done. I have one question to General Narasimhan. The biggest question that the public of India, the general public of India is, worried about or asking themselves is India capable of handling China militarily? Do we have the capability to, face a de-escalation on the military front, even if it is triggered by China from their side? These are the two questions I have.
Excellent questions, and I leave the military question for General Narasimhan. But on your other question, let me say that, there is one other thing which I would like to mention in response to your question, which is that, as Prabhuji said much earlier in the program, that the people of India are very upset with what has happened on the India-China border. Now, sometimes it is difficult for governments to ban certain imports, etc. They can put tariffs, they can remove tariffs, they can lower tariffs, but banning something becomes difficult because of our international commitments. But if the people of India decide that they will not buy a particular brand of a particular good, it will have a huge impact and it will send a huge signal and message. For example, and I'm just sharing you my own example, earlier this month, late last month in May, I had to buy a new mobile phone, and I decided I will only buy a Samsung phone. I will not buy an Oppo, a Vivo, or a Xiaomi phone. Now, if lakhs of Indians make such decisions, I think it will send a very strong message to China. And this will be people's diplomacy, where the government doesn't need to come in, but the people of India can take a hand in diplomacy and send a strong message and react to the anger that Prabhuji mentioned that they feel after what happened on the India-China border areas. So this is just as an example that I will share with you, and I'll stop there and leave the military question to General Narasimhan.
General Narasimhan, I have one question which I will put. You can answer both together, which he has answered. How you compete with a country like which they have got a defense expenditure almost 120 billion US dollar, as against less than $6 billion, $7 billion by India. So from 2000 they were 15 billion. They have come to 121 billion, and they have about 7% of the GDP being spent on army or defense. And how can you compete with that kind of country?
Okay. Let me add a little bit to what Mr. Gautam Bambawale said on the mobiles. There is a study which has come out today morning, which says 40% of the Indians are the ones who will make a choice like what Mr. Bambawale did. The remainder 60% are going to still buy the Chinese phones. So this is something that we need to look into. The reason why I mentioned this is, in addition to what Mr. Bambawale said about people making a choice, we also need to start working on indigenization and what we can produce indigenously within the country. That capability we need to start building. And cost is the main issue for which people are going to China. How can we reduce that cost here in India is something that we need to work on. If that happens, automatically you will find the choices will change. And nobody would like to buy any other product from outside, and Indian products are as good as any other product that can be bought. So this is one point I wanted to mention. Second point is on the defense budget. The defense budget, after they announced a 6.6% increase this year, is $168.2 billion. That is the defense budget of China. Ours is somewhere fluctuating around $55 to $60 billion. Basically, he has 3 times our budget as the defense budget. That is number one. Number two, the other advantage that he gets is most of the stuff that he makes is indigenous. Other than the S-400 which he imports, most of the other equipment he makes indigenously. So he gets more value for money. That is the second point that we need to keep in mind. The third point that we need to keep in mind is generally people make a sense of how many tanks one has got, how many tanks the other has got, how many aircraft one has got, how many aircraft the other guy has got. That is not the way the combat potential and combat power is calculated. If you only do bean count, obviously he has got 3 times or 4 times number of equipment what we have. But you need to take into account, he has got a territory which is 3 times more than ours. He has got an area which is the plateau, Tibetan plateau, which generally is around 4,000 meters in height. He can have 500 aircraft, but the load he can carry will be that of equivalent to 100 aircraft. So he has got geographical and other issues to deal with. And also in the mountains, you would have seen so many tanks have come, so many tanks he has amassed, etc., etc. Tanks, etc., on mountains are more of a liability than an asset, because he has to use the valleys to come in. He has to use restricted areas to deploy. These are not very comfortable for any armor officer. You can ask him. No armor officer will be comfortable with a restricted area where he can't maneuver. Armor scores where the maneuverability is available. So you look at the terrain, you look at the heights in which he has to operate, you look at the area he has to deploy, you will find that the numbers which look so big will not be so big thereafter. So what I would say is, it's good to know what he has got, but it is also good to know what he can bring to bear on you. And if you look at that, Indian armed forces are quite capable of handling this particular threat. And if you, to buttress my point, please read that Belfer Center report, which had just come a couple of days ago, which clearly says where all we'll be able to score over the Chinese. So I am quite confident, having commanded the brigade, the division, and the corps on the Chinese front, I am quite confident that we'll be able to handle them, push comes to shove. But I'll also place a caution, that option should be the last option. We need to keep talking to them. We need to resolve the issues. The military option should be the last and the least option that we should consider at this point in time.
Then are you saying that strategically we are better placed on the ground in that area?
That is, if you are considering that area, it is not strategy. Then it comes to the operational and the tactical level. I think we'll be okay.
You will be okay, because yesterday Air Chief Marshal told us that even on the Air Force side, we are better placed and we can handle we can give enough air cover on the ground in this area.
Yeah, in our case, most of the aircraft will take off from aircraft in the planes, and they'll be able to carry more load and they'll be able to operate much better. So those are issues that people have to consider before they say that, Chinese have got an overwhelming kind of force levels there.
One thing which everybody, PLA is basically an ideological led army. That's the only country, or Russia may be there, all the communist country, because they report to the communist leader. And in this case, the president of that, perhaps commander-in-chief and chairman of the military commission and whatnot. How the PLA, do they use their own mind, or they are led by what they have written in the red book which they are given?
See, the red book is of the Maoist era.
No, I just use red because of China.
Though they still read them, and I don't deny that fact. But the fact of the matter is, today's PLA is a changed kind of a PLA. We need to understand that PLA. Please look at the modernization program that they launched. Please look at the changes they brought to the command and control structure and the organizational structures. Please look at the effort that they are putting into improving the joint operations capability. This is not the PLA of the Maoist era. That is one. They keep saying that PLA is a party's army. PLA is party's armed forces, but it doesn't change anything considerably. Their capabilities are good. We need to consider them as good professionals and then plan accordingly. We should not underestimate them, and at the same time, we should also not overestimate them.
It is more disciplined. It is an indisciplined force, I am told. They are indisciplined in a way. They can go anywhere.
That is not the feeling I get. They are not so indisciplined as you think them to be. They are quite disciplined. Yes, there is a different way of behaving between the officers and the men, because they don't have the JCO's cadre in between. Those are different issues. Those are functional issues. But I think they are disciplined and a professional force, and we should treat them and deal with them as such.
Kadam, I'm coming to you because I've been, as a journalist, I'm not a military expert. I don't report on foreign affairs, but most of the friends in the foreign office, I used to hear something and pick up. So I'm trying to recall what was happening earlier. And there was a concept of some special envoy to China. There was in America also, there were various countries, this institution of special envoy was created. There was one, Mr. Brajesh Mishra was at that time, he was a special envoy, though there was this, at that time he was not the national security advisor. I think he was appointed. And after that, Shiv Shankar Menon was also a special envoy, if I'm right, not wrong. Is there special envoy? No, I have not read in the newspaper. I may be informed. If that special envoy is there, have there been border talks were going 20 border talks, 21st or 20? I used to get some number. And what is happening that process of having some interaction with them?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is, in 2003, when then Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Vajpayee went to China, they set up this mechanism called the Special Representatives. And this was the Special Representatives for solving the boundary issue, the boundary question between India and China. And our first Special Representative was indeed Mr. Brajesh Mishra, and then others down the line. That institution continues even today. Our current special representative for the boundary question with China is our national security advisor, Mr. Doval. From the Chinese side, the special representative is their foreign minister, Mr. Wang Yi. And they have had meetings quite regularly. I think even last year in 2019, they had a meeting. But I am not very sure what will happen to this mechanism of having special representatives for the boundary now that there has been such a big change in what has happened in the border areas between India and China. We'll have to wait and see how the governments of the two countries decide.
Because we have not heard about their meeting, what happened, what kind of things, because as you said, to discuss the border, and LAC is being redefined by the Chinese at the moment. So this institution which was created during Vajpayee's time looks like ineffective. They're not inactive, you can call it, or ineffective, you can call it, because that could have resolved some of these issues which are cropping up now.
Yes, you're not wrong, but I think they have been meeting till quite recently. Even in 2019, towards the end of 2019, there was a meeting of the special representatives of India and China on the boundary question. But of course, what has happened this summer, as I have repeatedly said, and as all of you agree, is something quite different. It's an inflection point, and India needs to now reassess its China policy.
Other thing which, please, go ahead.
With the kind of situation that prevails in Ladakh at the moment, do you think that some sort of a calm situation has been achieved in Ladakh? And what are the steps that you would suggest, both militarily and diplomatically, that we need to take from now on to move forward the India-China relationship? I think the question is to both.
No, in this kind of situation, I would only say, and I'll leave the rest to General Narasimhan, but I would only argue that it is very important to keep the channels of communication open and working. And for issues on the boundary, there are two channels. One is, of course, in the military channels, which is on the ground between the generals, etc., and other levels of officers. And then there is a diplomatic channel. It's called the Working Mechanism on Border Affairs. And that channel is also, I believe, working. But definitely there is a need to step up our communication between the two countries as we go ahead. We should never stop this line of communication or lines of communication between the two sides.
Yes, sir. General Narasimhan.
I'll add a little bit to the earlier question of special representatives. Most of the things, most of the people feel that nothing much has been achieved after 22 rounds is basically because what they have spoken, what they have discussed is not in the open domain. It is in the confidential domain, and so we don't know actually what happened. On that basis, to come to a conclusion that nothing much has moved on is something that we shouldn't do, because we don't know actually what has happened. That is the point I wanted to say. That is one. There will be some, definitely out of the three-step process, one step was completed in 2005. We are still in the second stage of process, and then thereafter we need to go to the third stage. It will take some time, which we need to give it a little bit of slack on that. As far as the, what is the second question, Bipindra? I just missed it.
I asked what are the steps that we can take, both
Okay.
militarily and diplomatically, whether
Okay.
calm is prevailing in Ladakh at the moment.
At the moment, I would say that calmness prevails, but there is a tension. You can see the tension there. That is definitely there. What we need to do tactically and operationally is something that we need to keep our intelligence and surveillance systems up. We need to monitor not only that area but also the entire line of actual control and be careful about what moves are being done on the other areas. The other thing that we need to do is to ensure that we need the reinforcement capabilities, which we felt that this time that it should be there. It was there, but then we need to be prepared for it and task them accordingly so that they can be prepared for it mentally also. So basically, on the tactical level, intelligence and surveillance resources that you need to maintain, the whole of LAC needs to be monitored well, and you need to have the reaction capability built well. Also, we need to look at the kind of fighting that you have to do. If you have decided that you're not going to open fire, now it was started with push and pull. Then you came to throwing stones in Pankung Store in 2017. Now you have used stones, batons, and whatever. So this is something that we need to do a proper case study of this and see as to how this needs to be met with. And
We can send the world champion wrestler from here there. and most of the RSS Swayamsevak with lathi wielding, they may also do expertise.
The point I was trying to say is, in the operational procedures, a lot of people have said, we should open fire, etc., etc. There is some news floating around, the rules of engagement have changed, etc. I don't think those things are actually correct. The thing that probably has come up because the media has extrapolated what the PM said, that we are given the freedom for the forces to operate. Yeah, but the issue is that freedom was never lacking even before. What PM has said has given the morale booster to the troops at the border levels. It is not that the local commanders did not have the privilege or the freedom to operate on their professional judgment. It is that their hands have been strengthened by this statement. But people have gone further and said, no, battalion commanders have been given, in extreme circumstances, they can open fire, etc. So this is something that we need to. Sorry,
we have got some questions from some of our viewers who are watching us. And first question is obviously, Gautam, for you. Do you subscribe to the theory that Imran Khan may have pushed China to increase aggression against India?
No, I do not agree with this theory. I don't think Imran Khan can ask China to do either A or B or C. So I do not agree with this theory at all.
The other question is for General Narasimhan. War must be avoided at all costs. That what the reader is saying or viewer is saying. Who avoided it with Pakistan last year barely, but China does not appear to be on the safe side. What is your view?
Sorry, I didn't get that question.
He said war must be avoided. That's the view of the question who is asking. But we avoided with Pakistan last year just by the nick of time. But China doesn't appear to be behaving responsibility. What is your view? You should go for a war or avoid the war?
As I said in our earlier interaction, I was saying this. War should be the last option. I think we have even below the war option, we have many options that we can do without being kinetic about it. So those are the options that we need to try first. First, we need to talk to them, keep talking to them as much as the time requires. I just want the viewer's mind to go back to Sundarumchu. Please go back and see how many years we took to disengage in that area. So talking once or twice, it doesn't work out. One need not be disheartened. You need to continue to do that. Ensure that the violence levels violence levels are not there. We need to make them disengage and go back to the status quo ante as it was existing in the month of April. And thereafter, then we need to take this up. And war is a last option. I don't think we need to even think about it at this point in time.
Gautam, there is a question which is the economic diplomacy. Basically, it is there that India has been very openly inviting various companies to come to India, and people are responding favorably as well. And China found it difficult that, Chinese, most of the companies which are operating in China will shift finally to Vietnam or to India. Is there the reason for to have this kind of provocative statement so that India becomes a little kind of a dangerous country to invest in?
No, I don't think that, this is a very far-fetched and long argument. I think the reason for what the Chinese army did is much more immediate. But to come to this point, I think India should, in fact, improve the ease of doing business and the simplicity of doing business in India, not only for foreign companies, but for Indian companies also. It is very important for companies across the board to find it easy to do business, and only then will they come and invest here in India. So I think we need to improve on the ease of doing business in India, make it easier for all companies, foreign and Indian, to do business in India. And only then you will see the amount of foreign direct investment coming to India increasing appreciably and increasing.
I want to ask another question, which we have read about in the newspaper. India, China, Russia virtual meet is happening. Do you think this issue will be discussed in that also? Russia can play some important role?
I am told that bilateral issues will not be discussed there. This is what I've read in the newspapers. So I assume that the border situation will not be discussed. But, and here, of course, because it is virtual, there can't be any behind the scenes discussions.
Correct.
So off the table discussions. So I
on the sideline, nothing had happened.
Discussed. On the sidelines, there is nothing, because there are no sidelines.
There are no sidelines. You see, other economic question which arising, I'll ask you that question, that Prime Minister talking about it's India century, 20th century is going to be India century. And everybody are talking about it is going to be Asian century, Japan, Korea, and everybody picking up. But does China want to sabotage that? Okay, it can't be India century, it can't be any other century, it has to be Chinese century. Therefore, involve everybody else in this kind of tension. Therefore, China becomes the Chinese, and it wants to lead the Asia as the only economic power. Could that be the reason for this 20 years after?
I'll add a little more to what Mr. Gautam said in the earlier question on the economy also. See, the issue that comes up is, we are not only trying to get the companies to move out of China. We are looking at FDI from anywhere. It is not only related to whichever company is wanting to shift out of China. So the issue that comes up is, I add to what he said. He said the exact thing to say that ease of doing business. Ease of doing business is something that we need to really keep improving. In the morning also, we had some other discussion wherein this point came up. One thing that we need to do is to ensure your land availability, your infrastructure availability, your power. Today, the power is actually 70% of your cost. So the power, availability of power, these are the things that you need to look at and then make it easily available to the people who are coming in. And other than that, starting the business to do business, the licenses, etc., that a person needs to get has to be made easier. So these are a number of things that we need to do to get the companies here. Having said that, there are studies that have been done on companies that have been wanting to shift out of China. The first priority has gone to Vietnam, basically because of the logistic chain being shorter, the supply chain being shorter. Vietnam has taken the major portion of companies which are wanting to shift out of China. Then comes Thailand, then Taiwan, and accordingly it goes. India figures in number 7. So India figures in number 7. We need to make this come to number 1. How we do this is the way I have mentioned to you. We need to make ease of doing business, like Mr. Bambawal has said, ease of doing business has to be looked into much more carefully. And the second thing is on the Asian century. This Asian century thing didn't come now. Actually, when Deng Xiaoping met Rajiv Gandhi, even that time this statement was made. It has been coming from that time onwards. And everybody realizes that most of the economies that are doing well are actually located in the Asia and the ASEAN region. Look at Indonesia, which is growing. Look at Vietnam, which is growing. Look at India. Look at China. Look at South Korea. So these are the economies that are going to shape the economic landscape in the world. And that is the reason why this has come up. If China is trying to sabotage this, please understand he'll also get sabotaged in the bargain. Today, look at the kind of opposition that China is facing from EU, from US, from even countries within. Like India now will have a problem with China because of these issues that have happened. It is also affecting China's growth. So it is, I don't think he's trying to cut his own leg, but I think these are different reasons what has prompted him to do this.
I'll ask, I'm concluding this now. I'll ask Gautam, do you recommend 2 steps, diplomatic as well as both economic, which India should take now to contain China? 1 and 2, short.
Yeah, sure. Let me start.
You said
by
5G
saying,
and everything, you have said it. Other than that.
Yeah. So let me start by saying that India needs to take a close look at its China policy, but this must be a decision which is taken coolly, calmly, and rationally. There is no need for any hot-headedness. And 2 steps which I think from such a cool, calm, and rational decision-making methodology which we could come to is 1, the 5G, which I had mentioned earlier, and 2, I think we must build up our partnerships with the democracies of the world, which I also said earlier. But I think both these go hand in hand, along with any other economic diplomacy steps which we have already discussed.
General Narasimhan, military, what should we do?
Military, I have explained earlier, we need to improve, we need to keep our intelligence and surveillance capability high, ensure that we have this early warning that we need, keep a surveillance properly across all the line of actual control, and also build up your capability for any reinforcement that is needed in those areas. In addition to that, all is not going to be, as I see it, after some time. Now, of course, the tempers are running high. It will cool down after a while, I'm sure. And I am sure hand in hand will start again at maybe after 2 years or whatever time it is. So we need to keep the interaction between the armed forces also going. Somewhere down the line, we also need to keep the mutual trust between the armed forces. We started a number of things in between. I think we need to revisit them and check as to how those things can be made effective or made more beneficial to both. Those things, we have signed a number of these SOPs and agreements, etc. We need to have a relook at them and see how we can make them more effective. One more agreement need not necessarily make them effective, because 5 have not become effective. Why will the 6 become effective?
Yes, that's
so
right.
we need to look at the ones which have been signed and make them more effective. I think this is the way to go. All is not enmity, all is not adversary. You need to have a combination where you need to build the mutual trust. You need to defend your territory correctly, and I think that is the way to go.
Good. General is talking diplomacy as well. That's good. let me ask another question. Very short question. Yes or no? There are some elements in this country who feel there is going to be a limited border war soon. Gautam, do you agree? Yes or no?
No.
General?
No. That is basically because you can't define what is limited. And we can
because limited border, you know, as a general, border war means certain points which flash up like that happening in the past also. Like Kargil was a limited war, not the entire Pakistan war. So that kind of war, you don't see any possibility. It is just a show of strength by both sides. That's what I. So if I conclude everything, that both of you agree that there is need for a realignment of diplomacy as well as the military forces in the country to contain the Chinese aggression. That is the conclusion I can get back. If I am wrong, please correct me. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Nifindra, for coming here. Thank you, all of you, for participating.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.